Welcome to Scaling Impact, where we decode how entrepreneurs are harnessing the power of the UN Sustainable Development Goals to create remarkable and impactful businesses that drive transformation on a global and local human scale. We explore how sustainability is elevating our human consciousness and catalyzing us to create within constraints. We decipher why now is the biggest entrepreneurial opportunity since the dawn of industrialization and what leaders and entrepreneurs can do to harness the winds of change. I'm Anders Sorman-Nielsen, global futurist, EO Sydney Impact Champion and father, and your co-host with Lisa Andrews for Scaling Impact.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of Scaling Impact, where we are talking climate action with Guy Olian. Guy is the CEO and founder of Smart Ease. He is a senior executive delivering practical and strategic solutions to Fortune 500, ASX 200, large private firms, greenfield operations, and not-for-profits. He believes that businesses are key to solving social and environmental challenges. He also has extensive knowledge on how the financial services sector can impact the uptake of clean and smart technologies. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome today Guy to our podcast to discuss how we can all take action on impacting the SDGs and some of the global challenges that we face today. Welcome, Guy, to episode 13. We're talking about climate action. Can I ask you, what got you into this industry and why you're passionate about it?
Yeah, good morning or good evening to you, Lisa. It's a global world we live in, so we're both in different time zones. I have been really interested at the whole intersection of the business community and sustainability for going on 20 years now. So for me, the sort of business that we run, and we'll get into it in a bit more detail, is really exactly that. It's about using business and financial services in particular to drive social and sustainability outcomes in the broader community.
And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you do in this space and how that's come about.
No, absolutely. So we've been running our business, which is called Smart Ease, for the last 8 years in Australia and about the last 5 years in New Zealand. And what we do is we provide funding solutions for organizations to decarbonize and digitize their operations. So that means we finance a lot of solar and storage and electric vehicle charging infrastructure and building automation and related type solutions. And often what it means, and this is kind of where the beauty of finance is that often the way it's done, it means that these organizations don't have to put any money up front, and the payments that they make for this equipment is actually less than what they're already saving on their power bills, right? So it actually literally pays for itself. And by doing that and by sort of avoiding this kind of upfront hurdle that a lot of people say, well, I want to put my money elsewhere, we're trying to really accelerate this transformation in terms of decarbonizing of the world, which is obviously aligned with this sustainability goal of the UN that we're talking about.
And so decarbonizing the world is a pretty massive goal. And so I'm assuming your super skill in finance has led you to be able to empower that. When did you switch on to this kind of shift, and when did you start doing these kind of solutions?
So literally my first job out of university was in the sustainability strategy world. So this is back before it was cool, back in sort of 1999 when it was really trying to talk to large corporates. So I joined a management consultancy that was actually led by some ex-McKinsey people and some ex-people from Greenpeace, who rather than sort of barricading the boardrooms, in terms of activism, said, hey, how about we actually try and show these business leaders that that the way of the future is going to be sustainability inclined. So always it was really about understanding the business case for sustainability, because the thinking was that businesses can generally move much faster than policy, right? And so if you show them that this is the way of the future and this is where the opportunity lies, they'll shift their resources much faster than policy. So this was working with DuPont and Ford and BHP 20 years ago. And I took some of those thinkings and some of that logic and applied it into our business. Our business is not really working with those globals. It's really working with small, medium enterprises. So we've done 8,000 transactions now. It's really about working with the smaller organizations, a lot of EO type organizations in terms of their profile, because ultimately they're the ones that are often forgotten by finance, in the sense that finance is often really sort of geared at really large corporates and not at smaller companies, some of which are not small at any means, but it's that small, medium enterprise that's really our typical customer.
And so you've been a part of this industry for a long time, and a short time, because you look quite young, and I'm not going to go down that path. However, I want to ask around the mindset of the industry. And so was it purely just big corporates previously and now it's shifting to more SMEs, or what has been your experience?
I'd actually say it's the opposite. And this kind of also talks about the macroeconomic environment that we're in. So small, medium enterprises typically move much faster than large corporates because you can make a decision a lot faster. So historically, the market has really been driven, certainly in Australia, if you look at who's been putting solar on their roofs, it's been mums and dads and small business. And then recently, I'm talking the last 2 years, you've seen large corporates sort of start to come to the table. And there's a whole bunch of reasons as to why large corporates are now coming to the table. One is energy prices are going through the roof. So they're like, ouch, this is hurting. Two, they are increasingly aware of their own role and responsibility in decarbonisation. So they're like, we've got to do something. And if they're not going to do something, their customers or their investors are telling them, you better do something. And then the third is related to that, which is employees, right? They're saying, hey, this is really important to me. And if you don't do something about it, I'm going to go work elsewhere.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that in meaning and purpose. And we've seen just recently the Great Resignation, or so it's called. And I think there was also that trend of it was a competitive advantage to care about the environment and stand for things you believed in. Whereas in the next couple of years, I'm not sure your thoughts, how long it's going to take, that it'll actually be a disadvantage. And we're sort of moving into the cancelled economy. Do you think that business might be cancelled if they're not doing?
I feel like this is becoming a bit like internet banking. You know, like you don't go to any bank now that you can't access without internet banking, right? It's like just a baseline, you got to have it. And so solar has now reached that point, and this is just one technology of part of this decarbonisation journey. Solar's reached this point now where it is just cheaper to produce your own power on your own roof than buying it from the grid. And so that's kind of reached this new level of baseline where the business case is just obvious, right? So to your point about cancelled economy, I think if you're not doing it, it's like you're really a dinosaur.
And can you break down, I guess, decarbonisation for our listeners today? What does that actually mean, and the capital allocation towards that?
Decarbonisation obviously is really different depending on the nature of your business. So some things are relatively easy to do, like putting solar on your roof and changing light bulbs. But if you're a manufacturer and you've got, gas and other sorts of, really complex operations in your business, it's obviously harder to change that around. But ultimately, decarbonisation is about saying how you buy and use electricity, how you buy and use petrol or electrons if you've got electric car fleets, and then how you create emissions through some of the processes like manufacturing in your business. And decarbonisation is about saying, how can we reduce all those things? I'm obviously trying to simplify it. How can we reduce the carbon emissions from those kind of three things? So one is the electricity that we use in our operations. Two is how do we fuel our fleets of vehicles, delivery vehicles, staff vehicles, personal vehicles? And three is how do we reduce the emissions from processes that we control, like manufacturing processes on site. And to decarbonize means a whole bunch of things. So putting solar, putting light bulbs, adding batteries, etc. Now, if you aggregate it all, for most businesses, it's actually a bit of money, but it's not a lot of money in the scheme of things. But if you aggregate it, it's trillions of dollars, right? At a global level. We currently operate in Australia and New Zealand. We're considering going to the UK. I'll talk about that later. But it's really, I think for most organizations, it's just been a bit of a fear fest of stepping off the curb, right? Who do I talk to? Who do I trust to do the work? So which installer is going to do it? Because I agree, there's been some shonks. And so from our point of view, part of what we do is we partner with this network of installers that we screen over time, and we keep getting better at it in terms of who we work with. And so, yeah, we work with about 500 companies in Australia and New Zealand that are the delivery partners. And then when they go to their customers, they say, hey, you can put solar or storage or lighting in your operations and it doesn't need to cost you anything upfront.
It's interesting. You're talking about a lot of actionable things that business can take. And one of the things I loved actually last year in November, the Commonwealth Bank announced a partnership with Cogo. And that for me was huge, game changing. It's almost similar to when you book a flight and you get the opportunity to offset your carbon. And so the Commonwealth Bank and Cogo, what they were doing was using machine learning and AI to be able to understand from your transactions what your carbon footprint is, and then give you the opportunity to offset that. And so I'm sort of looking at that capital allocation, and I think there's going to be a lot of funds that will go into carbon products and carbon conservation, to be able to make a difference to climate change. Do you see that that'll shift the industry significantly?
So I think the availability of products like you're talking about is only going to increase, right? It's all about the here and the now. So the urgency to act is just constantly growing, right? We are not getting ahead of this climate emergency. The years just keep getting hotter and hotter. So it's not, we aren't making it better, right? So we got to keep moving, and we got to keep moving probably faster than we have been moving. And as a result, you're going to have a range of products come to the market, both at a personal level, like you talked about with Commonwealth Bank, and at a business and at an enterprise level. And so, yeah, absolutely, more and more products are going to come to the market, and I think that you're already seeing that because you're seeing the acceleration of adoption, right? So, and that means there's more case studies. That means that those that are sort of still feeling uncomfortable to jump off the curb have more and more case studies to look at and go, oh, no, it does work. And look, there's a real one I can go touch and feel if I'm still dubious. So absolutely, this is without a doubt actionable, and at a root level, every EO person in the network around the world, if they operate a business, can do something in that business.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have a partnership with the World Economic Forum, and we did have the conversation around how SMEs can lead the way. And I love that you said that earlier, that they can actually act quicker than a lot of the large organizations and governments. If we do zoom out for some of those macro stats for a moment, the SDGs with the United Nations, they're actually sharing that in 2019 was the second warmest year on record, and global temperatures are predicted to rise by up to 3.2 degrees by 2100. And I know in Australia we've had a lot of bushfires, there's natural disasters all around. And so sort of looking at those sub-targets, and these are the big global goals, it's around integrating climate change measures into national policy, strategies and planning. 13.3 is improve education, awareness raising, and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning. And so I sort of look at some of those big goals, and it is on the international agenda to be able to mitigate climate change. So, what actions would you love for businesses to take that could align with those big macro international goals?
So firstly, I would say fear not, right? So to all the EO members, it's like, hey, fear not. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and it's just about doing something and moving in the right direction. And as you move, you will learn. And so, for everyone that operates out of a warehouse or out of a small manufacturing plant, there should be solar on that roof, right? Do your thing. It will save you money. Like, it will not even cost you. In most OECD economies, the price of power has gone up so much that it will save you money, generally speaking, in about 4 years. And if it's not me financing it, there's plenty of other funders who'll do it so that it actually pays for itself from day one. So start generating your own renewable energy on your building. 2 is to start preparing for how you can then look at the rest of your operations in terms of decarbonisation from a process point of view, from a vehicle point of view, and just start reading about it. It's so available now. Again, fear not. And I think that's my message.
And what are your thoughts, I guess, on Australia and compared to other countries? So I've just recently been in Barbados, and the Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, shared that they were like the canary for the coal mine, in that they're going to feel climate change before anyone else. And I was just talking to someone today, actually, that was talking about being in Puerto Rico and how there's no air conditioning. And so, there's sort of developing nations that I see that their infrastructure and that they're really on the front line of climate. How is Australia different to them?
We are the lucky country in the sense that we have, pretty substantial and amazing social infrastructure in terms of health and education that a lot of these other countries don't. So in that regard, we're absolutely very, very fortunate. We're also fortunate in the sense that we've been an energy superpower, but probably with the wrong technologies. And that's probably the big thing that needs to change, right? So we, as a country, have been addicted to coal. It's been a major source of our own power as well as our export income. But we're also one of the sunniest places in the world. And so how are we different is we're going through a pretty painful, at the moment, both political and economic shift to go from old to new. But it's a really necessary change. And I think as much as we were an energy superpower with fossil fuels, we can be a superpower with renewables. So that, I think, is, and we're obviously a much bigger economy than somewhere like Barbados and Puerto Rico, even though Puerto Rico is part of the US. But I think fundamentally, as this lucky country in inverted commas, we can really drive a lot of the future thinking and prove that at a big scale we can move from old to new.
What is the future thinking? What are your predictions for the future in this space?
Look, for the next 2 or 3 years, I think it's just going to be really, really bumpy everywhere. We are really in the midst of this transition. So what's happening in global electricity markets and global energy prices, with inflation going through the roof, and it's really hurting everyone from the average man on the street to large corporates. It's really, this transition is smacking us in our face, right? So everybody knows that renewables are actually the cheapest cost of power over a long term, but we haven't got enough of it deployed. And so we're going from old to new. We know we need to decarbonize, and we're going through that pain of transition at the moment. And I think for the next 2 to 3 years at a high level, it's going to be painful. But I think after that, so much renewables is really about to be deployed, that it's already been planned, it's already been funded, it's literally about to be deployed, that I think we're then going to get to the other side and we're going to go down the slippery dip and it's going to be lots of fun. So power prices will come down and hopefully as a result of that, carbon emissions go down. But I think what this has highlighted is like, it's not someone else's problem. Like we've all got to do something about this. From a local level all the way to the big grid that we all get power from. And yeah, I applaud you for what you're doing in terms of like calling these things out. And all of us and business owners in particular, and small business owners even more so because we can move faster, can make contributions and influence their teams and influence their customers and influence their suppliers.
Yeah, totally. And so I'd love to split a little bit of conversation around building infrastructure and then adopting infrastructure. And so what I love is Elon Musk put out the $100 million Carbon X Prize. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but trying to create those, opportunities for innovation. And we've got a biotech company in Australia that's storing carbon in the soil and in the root structures. What are your thoughts?
I don't think there's one silver bullet here for where this is all going. I think it's going to have to be a range of things. So innovation is going to have to continue apace. And if you look at renewable energy venture capital, so in kind of new age thinking and next generation technologies, it's still continuing fairly significantly. So Elon Musk and others will continue doing that. Bill Gates has got some interest in this space as well, as much as every other billionaire seems to be getting into the green thing as well, which is great. And there will need to be really large solutions that can, at an industrial level, reduce carbon emissions. But there's also that local side of things. I don't know if I've answered the question or just repeated what you just said.
We actually just had Bill Gates open our Extreme Tech Challenge in Berkeley and San Francisco this year. And he was talking about how he's really interested in the infrastructure side of things. And he has $1 billion fund that's for infrastructure in Africa and making real world change. And he's just raised another $1 billion to do that. And so I guess I think about small, medium businesses, and then you compare that to, billionaires who are throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at different solutions. I kind of cross match that with the thought that innovation is typically 3 steps ahead of business adoption. And so looking at these things and seeing what you do as well. And so you're really that intermediary to help businesses adopt these things. So I don't know. I'm optimistic about the future. Are you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's part of the entrepreneurial gene pool, I think, that you've got to be a bit of an optimist. So absolutely, I am optimistic about the future and the fact that these, wise, sage-like characters like Bill Gates continue to make investments in this space is both a demonstration of the fact that it's important, but also a demonstration that they are optimistic about innovation. And so, yeah, I think absolutely it's that. But just to go back, SMEs contribute in most economies something like 50% of GDP. Like they are a major part of the economy. There's lots of them. So it's often generally the proclivity to go to the big end of town because you can get bigger bang for your buck. But for me, SMEs being fellow EOers, generally speaking, is really the heart of the economy, and they must be part of the solution.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm so inspired by entrepreneurs that do adopt things earlier, and particularly with climate change and climate action. It's almost like they'll attract more staff and more clients, and people will be really interested to support them because they're showing what they stand for. Is that something that you see as well with your current clients?
Yeah, and even in our own business. So we offer any employee that wants to put solar on their roof or their investment properties free loans for 3 years. So we just say, put it on free, 3 years. We also want them to go and volunteer in their own communities. So we give all staff kind of a few days a year to volunteer in their community. And then lastly, and it's part of just where the world's going, is we're kind of moving our own business towards net zero ourselves. So that's part of that journey. And what we're going through, to answer your question, is absolutely what we're seeing out there in the market.
And is that, I guess, inspiring growth? Are you seeing that there's a huge opportunity in Australia? Are you guys international?
So we're in Australia and New Zealand, and I've just come back from the UK where we're contemplating what's next there.
Yeah, and I guess so. Seeing that journey as well for other businesses, as well, expanding internationally, sharing their stories, and being able to do that. What's the regulation like internationally as well? Do you think Australia is better for solar than other countries that you've seen?
So it's a really interesting paradox. Australia has the most solar on rooftops in the world per capita. But if you then look at our policies in terms of renewable energy and decarbonisation, we're totally a laggard. So what happened was there were really substantial investments for small solar installations, which acted like an upfront rebate. And we've been a world leader in that regard. So literally, we've got 3 million Australian houses and businesses that have solar on their roof already, which as a percentage of our population is the highest in the world. So we've done unbelievably well in that regard, but we've done terribly in others. And I think, again, this is kind of where often business leads before policy and before government kind of gets its proverbial together. So rather than commenting on are we ahead or not, I mean, it's clearly been challenging in Australia. And if you look at other markets in the world, it's been challenging there too. But what's really driving this is just pure economics, right? You can produce clean power cheaper than buying it from the grid.
It makes sense. And so I guess, what is the payback period on that though as well? Is that forever? And, I was actually just sharing, one of the people I've been talking to here, where I am just now, is they were sharing that their energy bill is $1,200 US a month. And that's definitely a lot cheaper. And for me, I think my energy bill is about $100 a month, and I just pay what it is. I've never really paid any attention, but I noticed that the building next door has solar on the roof, and I'm like, oh wow, our building must have solar too. Is that why?
But, well, possibly. I don't know. But, I think when you ask about paybacks, so paybacks is a bit of a long question because it very much depends on where you are in the world and how much you're currently paying for power, et cetera. But generally speaking, it's in the order of sort of 4 to 5 years. But to give you an example, in the UK, 13 months ago, or even maybe 18 months ago, that payback was 8 years. But the power prices have literally tripled there in the last 12 months because of everything going on. And so all of a sudden, the economics and the paybacks have dramatically improved. And so again, it's sort of this economic equation much more than a policy equation now. And I think that's why I'm also optimistic. It's sort of making everyone take notice. It's like, guys, this is an absolute opportunity here. And if you want to use finance, great, you don't have to pay for it. But otherwise, you should be doing it because it actually makes great business sense. And we need you to do this for the world to start decarbonizing. You can't just leave it up to someone else. So the reason to not do anything at the moment is somewhat dumbfounding to me.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So, Guy, may I ask you some quick fire questions to round us out?
Sure.
Fantastic. Okay, number one, what is a book or books that you've most given as a gift and why?
I love The Alchemist. about dreamy journeys.
What purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months?
New pair of shoelaces.
And why?
So I can use my shoes and I don't need to buy a new pair of shoes.
I love it. Actually, it's very, very good in the carbon economy to recycle and reuse. So thank you. If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, getting a message out to millions or billions, what would it say and why?
I just love Yoda's statement, do or do not, but do not try.
Incredible. And do you have any closing thoughts that you'd love to leave our audience with today?
I've really enjoyed my EO journey. I think EOers have a really big role to play in this. If anyone's got any questions or wants to connect, I'd love to hear from you. But do or do not, but do not try. Like, just get out there and do something.
That is so brilliant. Guy, thank you so much for joining us today and inspiring us all for action. Now is the time, as you say, that the world is changing, and let's all lead the way in doing this, particularly as SMEs and leaders who are able to change quickly and really make a difference in the world. Guy, really appreciate your thoughts. Thanks.
Been great, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Scaling Impact. Make sure you subscribe to the show in your podcatcher, and we'd be super grateful if you leave us a great review. For more information about Scaling Impact, the Entrepreneurs Organisation, or our work on sustainable innovation, please check out EO Sydney online. We would appreciate if you can take a moment to share the podcast with a friend or a colleague and help build the movement. We hope that what we learn together on Scaling Impact can help us all build a sustainable future for ourselves and our children. See you in the near future.